Because cigarettes are poison. Everybody knows that.
If Herrera had given those opinions on the pre-trial forms, he wouldn't have been selected. But he probably wanted to be on the jury. He was retired, bored with golf, and tired of his wife. So, should cigarettes be illegal? Nicholas asked.
No, I think people shouldn't be stupid and smoke 3 packs a day for almost 30 years. What do they expect?
There was no doubt that his mind was made up. You should have said this during jury selection. We were asked questions just like these, said Nicholas. Herrera's cheeks went red, but he hesitated for a second. This guy Easter knew the law.
Yes, well, I can be persuaded, you know, Herrera said.
After a day in court looking at diagrams of lungs and listening to medical explanations from Dr. Bronsky, Lonnie drove to his supermarket.
We have guests from head office for you,
an assistant manager said with a frown. In his office, Lonnie found 3 men.
Lonnie, good to see you,
said Troy Hadley, son of one of the owners. He quickly introduced the others.
Listen, Lonnie, Ken and Ben here are from a company called Superhouse, and, well, for lots of reasons, my dad and my uncle have decided to sell all 17 stores to them.
Lonnie was finding it hard to swallow.
Why? 2 main reasons. Number 1, my dad is 68, and Al, my uncle, has just had surgery, as you know. Also, Superhouse is offering a good price. It's time to sell.
Will this store be closed? Lonnie asked, almost in defeat. Ken picked up a piece of paper.
Well, there are always changes when this sort of thing happens, but we see a future for you with us, Lonnie. We're ashamed to admit that we don't have an African American in a management position. We want this to change. We'd like you to come to Charlotte as soon as possible and spend a few days with us. When can you come?
In a minute, Lonnie had gone from near unemployment to promotion in a new company. He said with obvious disappointment,
I'm on jury service.
But what about the weekends?
Can you do this weekend?
Sure, said Lonnie. The first person Nicholas saw the following morning in court was the man who'd broken into his apartment. Nicholas had already decided what to do. He wrote a note and asked for it to be handed to the judge. Judge, that man out there, left side, 3rd row from the front, white shirt, blue and green tie, was following me yesterday. It's the 2nd time I've seen him. Can we find out who he is? Nicholas Easter. The judge called a 10-minute break and asked for Nicholas.
Now, where did you see this man?
Nicholas didn't mention the video, but told the judge that he'd seen the man a couple of times recently. The judge relaxed slightly.
Mr. Easter, have any of the other jurors mentioned anything like this?
No, sir.
Will you tell me if they do? If there's something wrong, I need to know. You can send a note through Lou Dell.
Well, there is something perhaps you ought to know. He hesitated. Colonel Herrera thinks that anyone who smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day for almost 30 years deserves what he gets. The judge digested this information.
Mr. Easter, I'm not asking you to spy on the other jurors, but I am worried about this jury because of the pressure from the outside. If you see or hear anything, please tell me.
Sure, Judge. Chapter 4. More telephone calls. The defense's questioning of Bronsky ended late Thursday afternoon, and Marley struck on Friday morning. Conrad took the first call at 7:25.
Good morning, Fitch,
she said sweetly when she was put through.
Good morning, Marley,
Fitch answered with a happy voice. his best effort at pleasantness.
"And how are you?"
Fabulous. Juror number 2, Easter, will wear a light blue shirt, faded jeans, and running shoes. And he'll bring with him a copy of Rolling Stone, October issue. Got that?
"Yes. When can we get together and talk?"
When I'm ready.
Pang, one of Fitch's technicians, was sitting in a coffee shop near Easter's apartment. On time, Easter left his apartment and started his walk to the courthouse. Of course, he was wearing exactly what she'd promised. Marley's second call came from a different number.
Something new for you, Fitch. You'll love it. Guess what the jurors are going to do today?
"Tell me."
They're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Marley's third call went to the offices of Wendell Rohr. She was going to send a fax, which must be handed to Mr. Rohr before he left for court. The fax stated which clothes Nicholas Easter would wear that day, and hinted at the pledge. Rohr called an emergency meeting. Before the court started, Nicholas waited for a pause in the conversation. "Hey, Herman, I have an idea." By now, Herman knew the other 11 voices from memory.
"Yes, Nicholas?"
he said. Nicholas raised his voice so everyone could hear him. "Well, when I was a kid, we started each day at school with the Pledge of Allegiance. Every time I see a flag early in the morning, I have this desire to give the pledge. And in the courtroom, we have this beautiful flag behind the judge."
"You want to do the Pledge of Allegiance out there in open court?"
asked Colonel Herrera.
"Can't see anything wrong with that,"
said Jerry Fernandez, who'd earlier agreed to support Nicholas.
"You're not playing games, are you?" asked the colonel.
Nicholas looked at him with aching eyes and said, "My father was killed in Vietnam. That flag means a lot to me." The plan was agreed. The jurors entered the courtroom. Just before Judge Harkins started his standard speech reminding them that they mustn't have unauthorized contact with anyone, he realized that the jurors were still standing. With their hands on their hearts, and led by Nicholas, they said the Pledge of Allegiance. Judge Harkins' initial reaction was of disbelief. He glanced at Rohr and Cable, who were open-mouthed. Then he stood. Halfway through the pledge, he joined in. Suddenly, it seemed important that everyone joined in. The lawyers certainly couldn't show any disloyalty. From the back row, Fitch watched in amazement. A jury taking control of a courtroom. It was extraordinary that Marley knew it was going to happen. It was exciting that she was playing games with him. But Fitch at least had some idea of what was happening. Wendell Rohr, on the other hand, felt completely defeated. He was shocked by the sight of Easter dressed exactly as the fax had said, and then starting the pledge. He stared at the jury, especially Easter, and wondered what was going on. The pledge finished, and the jurors sat down. Judge Harkins seemed determined to act as if this was normal behavior.
"I believe we're ready for a new witness," he said.
Rohr stood, still shocked, and said,
"The plaintiff calls Dr. Hilo Kilvan."
The next expert witness entered the courtroom. Lonnie was collected early Saturday morning by a company jet and was flown to Charlotte. Ken met him at the airport in a company van, and 15 minutes later they arrived at the Superhouse headquarters. Ken and Ben showed him around. They had coffee with George Teaker, the CEO, in his large office, and then Lonnie was shown a video about the company. According to the video, Superhouse was going to grow by 15% a year for the next 6 years. Profits would be amazing. When the video finished, a young man arrived with details about health care, share options, and vacations. After lunch in a smart restaurant, there were more meetings and another video. By now, Lonnie needed some fresh air, and Ken suggested that they could go and play golf. Lonnie had never played golf before, a fact that Ken knew, but he suggested that they go and get some sunshine anyway. They drove through neat farms and tree-lined roads until they reached the country club. Lonnie was nervous about entering a smart country club and decided to leave if he saw no other black faces. But George Teaker was in the club lounge with two black gentlemen. They all greeted Lonnie warmly, and he felt much better. They drank and talked and planned the future. Lonnie stayed the night in the country club and woke the next morning with a slight headache. That morning there were two brief meetings. The first was with George Teaker, who wanted Lonnie to run the Biloxi store for 90 days under a new contract. If all went well, he'd be transferred to a larger store. They were then joined by a lawyer, Taunton, who handed Lonnie a proposed contract of employment. "Look over it," Taunton said, tapping his chin with a designer pen, "and we'll talk next week." He took out a notepad. "Just a few questions," he said. The questions were routine. Then he asked, "Have you, in your capacity as store manager, been involved in litigation?" "Yes, I have," replied Lonnie. "About 4 years ago, an old man slipped and fell on a wet floor. He sued." "Did it go to trial?" asked Taunton. He knew every detail. "No," replied Lonnie. "The claim was settled out of court." Taunton glanced at Teaker and said, "This tobacco trial in Biloxi could be serious for companies like ours. If the plaintiff wins the case and there's a big verdict, there will be a lot more tobacco litigation. The lawyers will go crazy. They'll bankrupt the tobacco companies." "We make a lot of money from tobacco sales, Lonnie," Teaker said with perfect timing. "There has to be an end to these trials. The tobacco industry has never lost one of them. I think their record is something like 55 wins. He took a deep breath. "Sorry if I said too much, but this trial is so important." Lonnie thought about this. Taunton was a lawyer, so he wouldn't talk about the trial in a way that wasn't appropriate. "No problem," he said. Taunton was suddenly all smiles and promised to call Lonnie. The meeting was over. On Monday morning, the jurors met over coffee and talked about their weekends. Herman was late, so he couldn't stop them whispering about the trial. "I think I was followed at the weekend," said Nicholas. "Why would they follow you?" "That's what the tobacco companies do. They spend millions of dollars selecting us and more watching us."
"How do you know it's the tobacco company?"
asked Sylvia, lighting another cigarette. "I don't. But they have more money than the plaintiff. In fact, they have unlimited funds to fight these cases." For Wendell Rohr and the plaintiff's team, the weekend had brought no rest. They'd traced Marlee's fax back to a truck stop near Hattiesburg and obtained an unclear description of a young woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s, wearing a fishing cap with a face half hidden by dark glasses. It was the opinion of the 8 principal plaintiffs' lawyers that this was something new. No one could recall a trial in which a person outside had contacted the lawyers with hints of what the jury might do. They all agreed that she'd be back and that she'd probably ask for money. A deal. Money for a verdict. They didn't dare, however, to plan how they might deal with her. Maybe later, but not now. Fitch, on the other hand, thought of little else. He'd spent the weekend watching jurors and meeting with lawyers. He'd been pleased with the Ken and Ben show in Charlotte and had been assured by George Teaker that they could trust Lonnie Shaver. Fitch slept 4 hours Saturday and 5 Sunday. He dreamed of the girl Marlee and what she might bring him. This could be his easiest verdict yet. Fitch watched the courtroom on Monday from the viewing room in his office. He listened as Dr. Hilo Kilvan continued with his testimony. Fitch's consultants were certain that the plaintiff's witnesses hadn't really made a strong impression on the jurors. In court, Nicholas sent a note to the judge saying that he needed to see him urgently. At lunchtime, he went to the judge's chambers. "I need to be quick," said Nicholas. "It's Frank Herrera. We talked about him last time. Well, his mind is made up, and I'm afraid he's trying to influence people."
Is he discussing the case?
"Once, with me. Herman is very proud of being foreman of the jury, and he won't allow talk about the trial. And another thing." Nicholas opened his case and pulled out a video cassette. He looked at a video cassette recorder in the corner. "May I?" The judge nodded. On the video, they watched a man enter Nicholas's apartment. They saw the man, Doyle, taking pictures of the apartment and then leaving. "I was robbed and beaten about 5 years ago, and I almost died. I'm careful about security now," said Nicholas. Fitch's sandwich was interrupted with the words he was waiting to hear. "The girl's on the line." He grabbed the phone.
"Fitch, baby, it's me, Marlee. Don't know the guy's name, but he's the goon you sent into Easter's apartment on Thursday, just after I gave you the note. Anyway, later, you sent the same goon into the courtroom. That was stupid, because Easter recognized him, and he sent a note to the judge. Are you listening, Fitch?"
Listening, but not breathing. "Yes."
"Well, now the judge knows that the guy broke into Easter's apartment. So get him out of town, fast."
2 hours later, Doyle was flying to Chicago. At 3:30, the jurors were sent back to their room, and Judge Harkin questioned the lawyers about the break-in at Nicholas's apartment. Nicholas was called to the meeting, and the judge questioned him about the man who'd been following him. Nicholas answered in perfect detail, giving dates and places, and also describing the security measures in his apartment. He played the video cassette again. After he'd gone, Judge Harkin and the lawyers considered their options. Back in court, Judge Harkin apologized for his decision. It was very rare to sequester a jury, but he had no choice in this case. The jurors should leave, go home, pack, and report to the court the next day, ready to spend the next 2 weeks sequestered. Chapter 5. The Siesta Motel. On Monday night, Nicholas invited Jerry to go to a casino to celebrate their last hours of freedom. Jerry invited Sylvia Taylor Tatum. They were becoming friendly. Sylvia was divorced for the second time, and Jerry would soon be divorced for the first. Lonnie Shaver spent Monday night working. He contacted George Teaker at his home and explained that the jury was going to be sequestered and that the judge had forbidden any direct phone calls to and from the motel. Teaker was sympathetic and worried about the result of the trial.
"Our people in New York think a guilty verdict could really damage the economy, especially in our business."
"I'll do what I can," Lonnie promised.
"You've got to help us, Lonnie. I know it's difficult, but you're there, know what I mean?"
"Sure, I understand. I'll do what I can." Durwood Cable waited until almost 9 on Monday evening to talk to Fitch.
"We were embarrassed in court this afternoon," Cable said. "Who was the guy in the apartment?" "He wasn't one of my men. We have reason to believe that he was a goon employed by Rohr and his boys."
"Can you prove it?"
"I don't have to prove a damn thing, and I don't have to answer any more questions. Your job is to win in court."
"I rarely lose."
Fitch went to the door. "I know, and you're doing a fine job, Cable. You just need a little help from the outside."
Nicholas arrived first with 2 gym bags filled with clothes. Lou Dell and Willis, a deputy, were waiting outside the jury room to collect the bags.